Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
I've had constituents come up to me, don't let the Bears leave, but don't give them 1 red cent.
From the budget to the Bears, recapping the weekend in Springfield.
And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
And where peace talks stand with Iran following ongoing strikes from both countries. First off tonight, despite the fight over the minimum wage for tipped workers in the city of Chicago, those in suburban Cook County will receive a raise starting in just 1 month. The Cook County Human Rights Commission is reminding employers that the minimum wage will increase to $15.40 an hour for non-tipped workers and up to $9.25 for tipped workers. The county minimum wage is set to increase annually under a formula passed back in 2016. The commission adjusts the wage based on the greatest rate among either the federal or state wage or a county calculation using the Consumer Price Index. The rate does not apply to teen workers under the age of 18. A Mexican Independence Festival returns to Grant Park this summer after canceling last year during the federal government's immigration enforcement campaign. Organizers for El Grito Chicago say the festival will return September 12th and 13th with a stronger team and strengthened safety infrastructure. The festival honors the historic tradition of El Grito de Independencia, the rallying cry that sparked Mexico's fight for freedom, with live performances from local and international artists, authentic food from Chicago vendors, and a Mexican mercadito with local businesses and artists. A full entertainment lineup will be announced in the coming weeks. Early bird tickets are already on sale. And Pride Month festivities kicked off today in Chicago and around the area. The CTA unveiled its 2026 Pride Train to celebrate. It is the 9th year the train has been part of the system's Red Line. The flagship events of the month are Chicago Pride Fest on Halsted Street from Addison to Grace. That's on June 20th and 21st. And the Chicago Pride Parade on Sunday, June 28th, one of the largest pride parades in the world. Up next, a roundup of the just completed legislative session in Springfield right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
The budget and the Bears were the talk of Springfield over the weekend. This year's spring legislative session, which ended early this morning, may be remembered for the bills that did not pass just as much as what did. While lawmakers approved a $56 billion budget, the House and Senate could not agree on a bill that would pave the way for the Bears to build a new stadium in Illinois. Joining us over Zoom to recap the weekend in Springfield is Ben Zielinski, a State House reporter at Capital News, Illinois. Ben, welcome back. So, as we said, the General Assembly, of course, passing a budget last night. How does the spending differ this year compared to last year's?
Not much, actually. By the time this current fiscal year is over, the amount that the state is planning to spend in fiscal year 2027, beginning on July 1st, is actually going to be pretty much the same amount that the state is going to spend this year. So, it really just goes to highlight, I think, how tight that budget was. There's hardly really any new programs in it, and there's no, additional spending on major policies that were already in the budget. Very, very, very tight budget year, basically a baseline budget this coming year.
What new revenue sources are included in this budget?
Yeah, the main ones are changes to operating loss deductions for businesses, but also the social media usage tax that the city of Chicago has also put in place. This would require the largest social media companies to pay a fee for each user that lives in the state of Illinois. Then there's other things such as new licensing requirements and fees for fantasy sports operators, basically taxing prediction market, sports bets, the same way that sports bets are currently taxed now. Tires is another one. A digital advertising tax was also created, but lawmakers are not going to collect money from it this year because they expect that's probably going to be tied up in court for quite a while.
What was the status, okay, because we've got to talk about the bear in the room, right? What was the status of the Bears Stadium talks going into the weekend?
Yeah, going into the weekend, it was still silence, essentially. We had no idea what was actually going to happen. There was no indication one way or another that a bill was going to be filed. It really was starting to give the impression, I think, that, this was having serious trouble getting support in the Senate. So, going into the weekend, I think we were, expecting maybe a last minute deal would come up, but I think chances of that actually passing through both chambers of the General Assembly were pretty slim, several days ago. And certainly we saw the end result was it could get through one place, but it was just too late. There was no time in the House for it.
So walk us through then, I guess, sort of like the back and forth over the weekend over this, because we thought there was a bill and then that bill wasn't. Now there's a new bill. What happened?
Yeah, so we talked to Senator Cunningham, the Senate sponsor from the southwest side of Chicago, about this on Saturday night. And he came out of a caucus meeting and told a group of reporters that the original pilot legislation, the mega project bill that Governor Pritzker had pushed for that the House had passed, that had no support in the Democratic caucus. So they had to change gears. They had to come up with something else. And he said they were going to file a plan that would basically allow the city of Chicago to actually be able to compete with Arlington Heights to attract the Bears and build a stadium. And, after that, it was kind of silent for most of the day on Sunday. And then late Sunday night, Senator Cunningham told reporters that he was going to file a bill, and ultimately around 10 p.m. he did file that bill, and it was a very generous incentive package, but it was too late for the House to take it up. They didn't have time to review it after it passed the Senate at 3:30 in the morning today, and I guess that's kind of where we're at right now. The Bears are in limbo.
Right. So today, Mayor Brandon Johnson in Chicago, he did react to this, continuing his push to keep the Bears in Chicago. Here he is.
There is no plan for Arlington Heights. There is no clear indication of how what has been proposed, though it did not pass, how revenue would actually be generated. What we have said from the very beginning, the only viable plan for the Bears was proposed by my administration along with the Bears 2 years ago.
Ben, was the mayor effective in peeling away support for Chicago or from Chicago lawmakers for that original mega projects bill?
It seemed like he was convincing. There was a lot of Senate Democrats who wanted Chicago to be able to have the opportunity to do something with Soldier Field, something with another site, to have an incentive structure there to potentially keep the Bears in Chicago, like the mayor has said. It turns out what we actually learned from Senator Cunningham is the Bears and the city of Chicago have actually been talking a lot more than we had thought they were. So that seemed to be playing into the minds of a lot of Chicago lawmakers that there actually was still a chance that the Bears could stay in Chicago. But obviously this remains kind of a bit of a confusing situation, because even this morning the Bears said they are only choosing between Arlington Heights and Hammond. But it certainly had an effect, I think, the mayor's message that Chicago could still be in the running.
What else did the Bears say about these late developments?
Yeah, they didn't have much to say really at all. They didn't take a position on the bill that was passed in the Senate this morning. They didn't actually see that bill until the rest of us saw the bill. So I think, they didn't have time to evaluate it either. But without action here in Springfield, they said that at this point, they're going to move forward on the same timeline that Kevin Warren said a few months ago, which is that they're going to make a decision within the next late spring, early summer, which is right where we're at. And that decision is going to come down to Arlington Heights and Hammond based on the current information they have right now, which is Illinois does not have an incentive package, but Indiana does.
Is there a chance then the legislature could meet again to possibly push a stadium bill forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch said this is going to be worked on during the summer. We know this is a priority for a lot of lawmakers, but I asked him earlier this morning, what is the chances of a special session? Are you actually considering doing that this summer? And he said no. So it seems to me that this issue, at least as far as the legislature goes, is off the table for right now. It's Lawmakers won't be back until November after the election. That's probably too long for the Bears. So I think a lot of folks are just waiting to see what the Bears do unless something crazy changes in Springfield.
All right, Ben Zelensky, thanks for bearing with us. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Brandis.
Up next, local reaction to the latest developments in the war with Iran. Stay with us. In the latest development in the Middle East, President Donald Trump says Israel and Lebanon have agreed to dial back their fighting, while over the weekend, the U.S. and Iran traded fire, testing a nominal ceasefire that has jeopardized peace talks. It's not clear how close the two sides are to a deal. Meanwhile, Iran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz continues to disrupt global energy supplies. Here to help us understand the back and forth are Ariane Tabatabai, Vice President of Research for Security and Defense at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Tabatabai previously worked at the State Department and the Department of Defense. Ibrahim Abu Sharif, journalism and Middle Eastern Studies professor at Northwestern University. He's author of the book Social Media, Religious Authority, and the Arab Gulf Crisis. Richard Porter, an attorney and longtime member of the Republican National Committee from Illinois. He was a White House advisor to President George H.W. Bush and Vice President Dan Quayle. And on Zoom, Robert Pate, political science professor at the University of Chicago, a terrorism specialist and founding director of the Chicago Project on Security and Threats. Welcome back to the three of you. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. Ariane Tabatabai, let's start with you first, please. Let's briefly sort of break down what we saw this past weekend when it came to the back and forth strikes.
Yeah, so evidently the United States and Iran have been negotiating back and forth to achieve a sustainable ceasefire and also to settle a range of issues that have been for a long time, for decades actually, kind of underpinned the threat landscape and have been the source of tensions between the U.S. and Iran. That includes Iran's nuclear program, but also its support for terrorism across the region. Negotiations seem to have stalled for now. What I do want to caution is that, you know, there's always a lot of ebb and flow in any negotiation. So we shouldn't read too much into the tea leaves and too much into Truth Social posts and Twitter posts from the Iranian side, I should say X posts, because, you know, you do have in any kind of complex negotiations, especially with two countries that have such distrust as the United States and Iran do, these things can be tricky. They're complex issues, and sometimes you make some progress and sometimes things come to a bit of a halt.
How does this impact the U.S.'s strategy for negotiations? What's been going on?
It seems like for now we're kind of back to a tit-for-tat responses across the region. There have been missile and drone strikes, and so we're kind of back to that tensions coming back between the two sides. So, you know, I think right now the administration just kind of needs to take a step back and think about what its posture is going to be going forward and what is acceptable ultimately. Right? This is about what kind of deal is acceptable from the United States perspective, from the president's perspective, and what he's willing to live with. The U.S. is not going to get everything it wants, neither is Iran. So it's a matter of figuring out what's on the table and what is acceptable.
Richard Porter, how about you? How do you sort of see what went on this weekend and, you know, where the U.S. stands when it comes to negotiations?
So I think you have to recognize that when Donald Trump is negotiating, he's doing a little game theory, and that's how he operates. So a lot of what he was doing, I think over the course of the weekend, by going back, was trying to establish dominance and to make clear that this is ultimately a surrender. It's a negotiated surrender, but you're going to do it on our terms. He's not necessarily going to get all the terms he wants, but I think he's trying to establish that kind of a dynamic, and he did it by basically saying, well, we have an agreement on the table. I have a few more points I want to go back to you on that. And so I look, the Iranians are usually the ones that are hard to bring to the table. And so by playing coy, I think the president's trying to do the same thing the Iranians are doing. And what he's been emphasizing is patience. Let him work his negotiation magic. In the meantime, we're choking them with an ongoing blockade. And I think what he's trying to convey is, I can wait you out. You guys are drowning. We're not. We have a record high stock market. You know, gas prices are high, but beyond that, we can wait you guys out. And so I think that's the message he's trying to deliver.
Ibrahim, you know, going back to sort of like the start of this war, initially the Trump administration justified the war as an effort to destroy the nuclear capabilities of Iran. But prior to that, former intelligence director Tulsi Gabbard argued that the Operation Midnight Hammer from 2025 did that Iran would not be able to rebuild its nuclear program at the time, sort of contradicting the president. With these sort of conflicting reports, why do you think the U.S. has started this war?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're conflicting because I think the intelligence reports were right. And so I think what's conflicting, what seems to be conflicting, is the erratic nature of President Trump's mediation. And his use of Twitter or the social media is not irrelevant, to be very honest with you. It is a new way of doing diplomacy, but it's, you know, just like all social media posts, they do tend to be erratic. So the problem is trying to find the off-ramp. I don't think surrender is on the table. But if you're looking for the off-ramp and we can't find it, I think we have to look at what we couldn't find in the beginning, that is the on-ramp. The United States made declarations that Iran is an imminent threat to the United States. Intelligence agencies around the world said no. Nobody wanted this war, not the Europeans, not the people in the Gulf. Nobody wanted this war. The Iranians didn't want this war. And so what happened, it was launched, I would say without a whole lot of wisdom, but I think there is an off-ramp available, but it requires a steady hand. And I don't know if this is being erratic is a strategy for negotiations. I have a hard time accepting that. But I do think there is an off-ramp, and at the end of it, the Iranians are going to be much more powerful than they were before.
Robert Pape, this war is consistently polled as having some of the lowest approval ratings for any U.S. conflict in history. With such an unpopular war, do you think the president is likely to find that off-ramp before the midterms?
I don't think he's going to find it very easily. It's important to understand that this war has been a colossal strategic disaster for the United States. We started this war with the idea it would be a weekend, essentially, maybe a few weeks. The idea is we were going to topple the regime. Well, that just simply didn't happen. And we did. The bombs hit targets. Military did a splendid job. What happened here is, as we won a battle, our strategic position got worse. Iran now is in control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's 15% plus of the world's energy supplies. That is an enormous gain for Iran, and they're in the driver's seat, and you saw it today. You saw Israel did a military action in Lebanon. Iran called off the negotiations, and within an hour, President Trump was on the phone with Netanyahu to get him to pull back. Now, how many people in the world can get President Trump to do something in 1 hour? And he's had multiple tweets trying to say, and this is directed toward Iran, understand, I'm pulling Israel back. Well, this shows you that Iran is in the driver's seat. Trump is in what's called a classic escalation trap, where he, again, won a battle, strategically behind and positioned worse. Now his choices are essentially capitulate to the stronger power, which of course he doesn't want to do, or escalate, and he's bouncing back and forth between these options, has been for weeks.
I want to get Richard Porter's reaction to that. What do you think what are the options here?
Well, I think it's nuts to say that Iran is the stronger power. That's just nuts. I mean, the reality is that we could take that straight anytime we wanted to, but the president is showing a real regard for human life. He's been fighting an entire war without losing any casualties. I mean, essentially, that's what he's been able to do. And he's trying to get this thing done with the economic hammer without putting troops onto the ground as necessary to clear out the straits. Now, the reality is there are vulnerable targets on both sides. Karg Island is just as vulnerable as the Saudi facility, which is enormous, on the other side of the Gulf. And I think our allies in the region have been saying to us, look, let's see if we can get this thing done without further damage being done to these very important facilities. But the idea that they're more powerful is ridiculous, Robert. It's ridiculous. Okay, you got to back off of that. This was a huge victory for the United States.
I don't want him to back off. Brandis, if I may, he's insulting me. If I may, can I just
go ahead,
Richard
Professor, and then I'm going to come back to the...
Can I just ask Richard a simple question, Brandis? Which is, so why did President Trump call Netanyahu this morning? Was he going to do it anyway? Or is this a direct response to Iran's behavior?
Yeah, well, why was Netanyahu choosing this moment to go into Lebanon, too? I mean, so look, there's a whole lot of gamesmanship going on between these guys.
He's not answering the question. He's insulting me, and he's not dealing with the facts.
Robert, I'm not insulting you. All I'm saying is that you're overstating the case for an Iranian power. They're not more powerful than the United States.
Okay, I'm going to get Ibrahim in here. Go ahead.
Okay, I think we're getting lost in the weeds here, and no one said Iran is more powerful than the United States. Everybody knows the United States have the biggest bombs. I know you're not saying that, nor am I. So we're saying, and comparatively, before the war, Iran is much stronger now. No one's saying it's a superpower. No one's saying that it has upset the balance of superpowers in the world. Nobody's saying that. And so I think that if you want to make a point, let's stick to the fact. Robert didn't say that Iran is more powerful than the United States. I didn't say it. Nobody's saying that. Nobody in their right mind would say that. So let's establish the facts about what we said, rather than imagine.
Okay, so to the almost to the point of who's more powerful. I'm not going to answer that question. But Ariane, how much damage can the U.S. really do to Iran's nuclear capabilities? Is that an achievable goal?
So I think I land somewhere in the middle of all of these conversations where, I do think that militarily we have actually made quite a bit of dent in terms of rolling back Iranian capabilities. That's true on Iran's nuclear program. It's true on Iran's missile and drone programs, naval capabilities, certainly. I think the bigger question is, what does that mean strategically, right? At the end of the day, you can roll back tactically a lot of Iranian capabilities, but what does Iran retain? So to come back to the nuclear program, as you mentioned, I think we've actually, both between Midnight Hammer, the operation last summer, and between this conflict, we have rolled back a lot of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Key facilities have been damaged. What I think is important here, though, is that Iran does continue to maintain highly enriched uranium that it has at its disposal, enough to make several nuclear weapons if it chooses to do so. If it chooses to do so is the operative piece here. So we need to know if Iran is going to make the decision after this conflict or during this conflict to acquire a nuclear weapon. We don't know that. We don't have the answer to that question yet. The second piece of it is that there is still a knowledge base that exists within Iran to be able to reconstitute its nuclear program. There are technical experts, scientists, and as the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency keeps saying, unless you're willing to kill every single person there, they are going to maintain that knowledge base to be able to reconstitute their program. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but they can do it.
Ibrahim, there's a point you disagree on.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think Iran has enough enriched at a percentage. 60% enrichment is not enough to make a weapon. It has to be around 90%. And however, we've been living with this science fiction time continuum fallacy. And as for the last 30 years, Iran has been 2 weeks away from the bomb. So I think we need to stop dipping into that retention pond of talking points. And that's not the main issue here. The main issue, President Trump thought that Iran is going to be the Venezuela system, where we take out their leadership and then we got their oil. They seriously miscalculated Iran. Anyone who is familiar with the region could have said it's impossible for you to repeat in the Caribbean to do the same thing in Iran. Impossible. Anyone who has a modicum of understanding. But however, there's a certain arrogance and a certain brash about the president, and his buddy Netanyahu has something on him because he's listening to the Israeli point. I'm not saying, because I don't know, but if you look at the action, the president's not totally in control here. It's very obvious.
Robert Pape, just a couple of seconds left. What does an off-ramp look like here?
He has no off-ramp. There's no exit or he would have taken it. And in about 6 or 7 weeks, we're going to run out of the oil inventories in the world, as most of the oil execs are now telling us almost every single day. So this idea, just wait it out, see what President Trump does. Well, the problem is we're running out of oil inventories, and that's happening every single day that he can't find the off-ramp. And I'm saying he can't find it because it's not
what does the off-ramp look like? 10 seconds.
There'll be a deal. I think there'll be a deal in relatively short order. I think by the end of the month, Trump wants
by
to have
the
this
end of June?
Yeah, I think they want to have this wrapped up by the 4th of July. Honestly, I think that's his game plan.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully we'll be back sooner to talk about this again. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Ariane Tabatabai, Ibrahim Abu Sharif, Robert Pape, Richard Porter. Thanks, everyone. And that's our show for this Monday night. Be sure to sign up for our free email newsletter, The Daily Chicagoan, at WTTW.com/newsletter. And don't forget to check out our website for our Chicago Summer Festival Guide. From street fests and art shows to outdoor concerts and cultural celebrations, we've got you covered. It is all at WTTW.com/festivals. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. We'll talk one-on-one with Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch about what he sees as the spring legislative session's wins and losses. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports educational initiatives in the legal profession.